What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Birdman bringing you another live commentary video of me actually in a focus midget at IRP, where that weekend, believe this was a test day on a Wednesday, and that Saturday I raced this car and three other cars, a Silver Crown car, the Sprint car, and the full-size Champion midget, along with the focus midget. The focus midget being the last and the fourth addition to the my schedule for that weekend. This was the test day to see if I was going to be like compatible with the car, if I liked the car, if I'm out, if I was competitive, if I was comfortable, all those things, and ended up being a good test session. We did three of these test sessions in a row, and all on the same day, and it was a good day, and we made a lot of progress, and ended up running the feature and doing all that. So it was a good day, and I just wanted to bring you guys along, analyze this video with you. First time in the focus midget at IRP, and just give you my thoughts, what I'm seeing as a driver coach, as a racing professional, as a driver, just someone trying to get better every single lap. It's important for me to be able to look back at this footage and analyze it so I know what mistakes I made and what worked, what didn't, and why was my fastest lap the fastest lap, why was my slower lap a slower lap, and all those things. So I just want to bring you guys along and analyze it with you. And yeah, without further ado, let's just get into it. And yeah, so this first lap, you see, I'm just on an out lap, and I'm on an out lap here. This is actually probably my second warm up lap, so the engine isn't quite up to temperature yet. So these first couple laps, I'm not even full throttle down the straightaways, but I am, as you can see, still running a pretty decent amount of speed in the middle of the corner, about 92 miles per hour here in turns 1 and 2. Down the back straight, not quite getting on full throttle all the way, still waiting for the engine temp to come up. We're 102 terminal velocity. You'll see that creep up as we go along here. We're about 92 miles per hour minimum speed through the middle of 3 and 4. So that's kind of like the baseline, and that was a 24.67 lap time. And this lap here, just ramping up a little bit. This is like, again, my first laps ever in a focus midget at this track at IRP. I have quite a few laps at IRP, but never in a focus midget with this kind of steering, this little horsepower, and this amount of this lightness, this amount of cornering grip, and all that. So this was a 24.19 lap. So this is where I start to pick it up a little bit. This is actually a 23.34 lap. You can see my minimum speed to the middle of the corner is creeping up slowly but surely. I'm getting on the throttle a bit more. 112 terminal velocity at the end of the back straight. Getting a little bit of action in the steering wheel. You can see there in the middle of the corner, 94 miles per hour minimum speed. Now it sounds like I'm finally opened up wide on the straightaway there. I'm on 119 miles per hour end of this front straightaway terminal velocity, and that was a 23.34 lap. So now that the engine's come up, you can see the engine temperature's come up now. I'm willing to lay into it all the way, full throttle. And yeah, so one thing that I wanted to note about this car to you guys is the steering of this car is very, very fast, very twitchy. The midget in general has a very short wheelbase, so every little input like this is going to make a big reaction to the car. That's why when you see me turn, IRP also has very long, wide sweeping corners, so I don't have to turn like a full hairpin corner like you might in a road course or a very tight track, even a short track. But it's very long sweeping corners, and like this is literally all my steering input is this. That's everything I need for the corner, and that's what you'll see. And the particular steering setup I have in this car is actually very, very fast. Like this little bit of an input does like this much to the tires. So and that's a lot when it comes to the racetrack. So one thing I'm also trying to do as I'm learning this car is figure out like, okay, how precise, like what do I need to do with my hands, and what do I need to do with my feet to make the car react the way I want it to, and also what do I like? And I'm also trying to use every single inch of the racetrack, so I'm trying to get as close to the outside wall as possible without touching it, of course. And I have to actually steer a little bit to the right, which is not the direction the car wants to turn naturally with the stagger and the setup that the car has. But I'm trying to get the car to go a little bit to the right, which is something the car like never really wanted me to do. But it was always a little bit on the edge when I did that. So it was very twitchy. And even some guys I talked to that had driven this car before was like, yeah, that steering's really, really fast. And like, I don't really feel comfortable driving that car, honestly. And but I had no other basis to rely on or previous experience with other focus midgets at IRP. So I was like, okay, it's just it's as twitchy as it is, and that's just what I'm going to deal with, and that's what I did. So here we're heading to a 22.77 lap, which is already 4 tenths away from the fastest lap I got this session, which is a 22.3. And the goal for this entire test day was to get somewhere in the realm below 22.5. And because that was a very good competitive lap time, and that's like what would be a good benchmark. So I got that in the first test session, which I thought was really cool. Felt pretty good about that. Obviously, the Focus Midget isn't as of a crazy high horsepower car as a Silver Crown Sprint car midget, but it's still a challenging race car. They have to drive all the way to the limit, maximize everything you can, and I was able to do that within the 8-9 laps that I ran the entire test session. So I thought that was cool. And that 22.7 you'll see here. So you can see I got that 119 end of the straightaway, terminal velocity. Trying to work my terminal velocity, my minimum speed up as well. You can see I barely cracked 95 there. So working that up too. We'll see if that translates down the straightaway. It does. I got to 120 on the back straight. Trying to roll even more speed on the entry. Got down to 92 there. You can see that I had a little bit of a moment there in the middle of the corner. A little bit of a wiggle right here. And that actually dropped me down to 92 miles per hour minimum speed, which is an indicator to me that I probably overdrove the entry. And a lot of people say that, like, oh, like the more action you have in the car, like you got to really work the rear tires and do this and do that. Like when you're slipping and doing that, you're going faster, or maybe at least it feels like you're going faster. But you can see the next laps in my fastest lap, I was definitely a lot faster when the car was planted. You want to be right on the edge of all four tires grip, but you don't want to be over the edge where you're having to catch yourself, and the having to do that ends up making you lose minimum speed. So that's what happened there, and I think in the front straightaway ends up suffering because of that. You can see here I only got to 118, barely 119 at the end of the front straightaway, and on my fastest laps I was like 121. So definitely makes an impact when you make a small mistake in turns 3 and 4. That also affects this next lap here. So that's a 22.7, and this lap is a 22.49. So it's a bit better. You can see I was just barely touched 95 miles per hour min speed, but basically I was 96 plus the entire time, which is better than the previous lap. And I got up to 121. Try to run a bit more entry speed. 95 miles per hour min speed that time, so that should help us down the straightaway. Yeah, so I got 121 that time, and that was a 22.49 lap. So that could have probably even been a better lap if I had a better exit to my 22.7 lap, the previous lap. So this next lap is a 22.43. You can see I have a bit more action in the steering wheel. I'm probably scrubbing a little bit too much speed, which I did because I was down at 94 miles per hour on the minimum speed there. But I still was able to get to 121 on the entry. My hands are a little bit smoother, you can see there. Like barely touched 94. So this isn't a great lap because my min speeds are suffering because I'm scrubbing too much. The tires a little bit too much, scrubbing a little bit too much speed as a result. This was a 22.43 lap. Now this lap here, you can also tell that I was slower in turns 3 and 4 because I only got to 119 at the end of the straightaway as well. And lap 7 here is a 22.47. So a little bit slower than the lap we just watched. But you can see my minimum speed was actually better. I was only down to 97 there. And we'll see how that affects so I barely touched 122. So the minimum speed and the terminal velocity in the straightaways highly correlate with each other. When you're driving a car that's lower in horsepower, which means it's more of a momentum car, it's more important to roll a higher minimum speed and focus on the middle of the corner speed, because if you go really slow and then diamond off the corner really sharply and lower your minimum speed in the middle of the corner, then you're going to be slow because you don't have as much horsepower and torque and acceleration to get off the corner fast, like you might in a sprint car or a Silver Crown car, a car with more horsepower. You can afford to diamond off the corners more. But in a car like a Focus Midget that's lower horsepower, more of a momentum car, think Spec Miata, in the road course racing world, where you just really don't have that amount of horsepower to lay into, you're going to end up rounding the corners more in a momentum car with lower horsepower than you are with a higher horsepower car where you can afford to diamond it a bit more, be a bit more aggressive on the entry, lower the middle of the corner, and then getting a big straight hands exit, getting all the power down on the exit phase with a higher horsepower car. I think Porsche, Trans Am, even Formula One to some degree. So This is why we were probably at a 22.47. And we're down 96 miles per hour on the turns 3 and 4. So this is actually my fastest lap that we're about to watch right here is a 22.31, which is only 1/10 slower than the fastest lap that I ended up getting in the third test session this day. And this actually matches my best lap time from the actual race day that I participated in when I raced all 4 cars in the same night. I also did a 22.3 in practice. So in my first session in the car within 8 laps, my 8th flying lap, I was able to do the same lap time. Like basically, I was able to get to the pinnacle of the car's speed practically within such a short period of time. And the fastest cars that ran the actual feature race, when it's all the focus minutes, all the top, like all a bunch of very, very good drivers, the fastest lap time of the race, I believe, was a 22 flat. So I think that was also the same for qualifying. So nobody really got faster than a 22 flat. Maybe someone touched a 21.9 or something like that, but this car also was down on horsepower compared to those cars. So I was probably down 15, 20. I don't know. I think the number was somewhere in that range, maybe 25 horsepower, which is a big deal when you're driving cars with already such low horsepower. So I was happy to be able to be as competitive as I was right off the rip and as fast as I was. So that was cool, and we're going to watch the 22.31 lap. So 119 entering front straightaway. I never touched below, you can see in the middle of the corner, I never touched below 98 miles per hour min speed. So that's obviously my fastest turn 1 and 2. The data doesn't lie. There's a reason why this is my fastest lap, and that's definitely one of the reasons why. You can see I also carry, like this is the point where I go, right there is when I finally go below 100 miles per hour on the entry phase. I think I actually managed to go deeper into the corner on the entry and faster. So I just slowly rolled out of the throttle smoother and slower, which allowed me to carry more entry speed and gain time on the entry. And I also, in the process, didn't lose on the mid corner. So I actually gained, and I was 98 miles per hour. So this is like perfect. Used up all the, you can see I'm using up all the road. I'm right next to the wall. Right next to the wall, using up all the road. And because of how good that corner is, you can see I have a moment of like actual sustained 122 miles per hour terminal velocity, which I think is like basically as fast as anyone goes around IRP in a focus midget in this spec. So that was cool to notice after the fact when I looked at the video and the data. So you can see also how long I stayed 100 plus miles per hour here on this on entry turns 3 and 4. And I barely only cracked 95 for like a brief moment, but I was basically 96 plus, 97 for most of that lap. And maybe I could have been a bit faster, and that's probably where I ended up gaining. When I gained a tenth, it was probably on the turns 3 and 4 end. But that was a good corner, and you can see the evidence of that. Nonetheless, I was 121 at the end of the front straight at the end of that lap. So that was my 22.31 lap. That was my fastest lap of the session. We'll just watch the rest of this. I did a 22.4, 22.3, another 22.3, a 22.3, and a 22.5 to finish off this session. We'll watch it together. I just tried some different things. Like I tighten up my exit a little bit. I do this, I do that, all just trying to get a little bit more out of the car, test to see what the limits are. Crack 121. Actually, it was more narrow on the entry there. You can see I went further down on the entry of the track, which means you're aiming to do more of a diamond, where it's a narrower entry, more of a diamond, which means a slower mid corner, and then more of a straighter hands on the exit sort of thing, just to see if I can get the car to like gain more time, if I can carry full throttle longer on the entry. There's different trade-offs that you're looking for, and the trade-off ended up not being in my benefit because I was like 91 miles per hour min speed, and I was 120 on the front straightaway. So because of the diamond, I was able to get a pretty good acceleration off the corner, but I probably lost a little bit too much time middle of the corner, which is why that lap was a 22.44, a tenth slower. And that's all it takes to be a tenth slower, and that's the fine details we're working with as professionals, trying to just maximize these cars. So this is another good lap where I did 22.33. I was 97 miles per hour main speed, barely cracked 122 there on the back straight. And even though I was a little bit slower in the middle of the corner, that was a bit more of a in between of like my previous 22.3 lap in my 22.4 lap we just saw, in terms of the entry on the turns 3 and 4, I was kind of in the middle. I wasn't super far down like I was the last lap, but I also wasn't as high up as I was in my other 22.3 lap, and that does affect what minimum speed I was able to end up carrying, which was 94 rather than, I think on my other 22.3 lap it was a 95 minimum speed. So we'll see how it affects the straightaway. We barely cracked 120 before rolling out of the throttle, so that line is kind of optimal. I had a pretty good 1 and 2, but turns 3 and 4 was not quite as good, but it was still like there's that trade-off again where you gain a bit more on entry and you lose some in the middle of the corner, and hope that you can make it up back on the exit to a wash, if not maybe slightly better. And that time it was slightly worse, like a 22.33 versus 22.31. So very close. We're talking fine details here, but those are all the things I need to be noticing as a driver, trying to coach myself up and just recognize these details so I can take them into account the next time I go and race a car. 95 here. And this is where the car starts going away from me a little bit. This is a 22.5 lap. You can tell I'm starting to struggle a little bit to get the car turned. I think I was dealing with a little bit of right front understeer, so the car wasn't turning as well as I wanted to, and I was probably overheating the right front a little bit, trying to get on the throttle harder and harder on the exit phase of the corner. That's always going to affect the right front the most. So this was a 22.57 lap, and then this lap, I try to roll even more speed on the entry and get full throttle earlier. And you can see I had to crack out. I did that little, like, I had to lift on the exit phase because I could feel the car understeering and scrubbing, and it wasn't turning. So I had to barely lift out of the throttle and then get back into it in order to avoid, like, I still got this close to the wall, but I had to avoid the wall by getting out of the throttle. And at that point, I was like, okay, the car's understeering. Like, I think we got a pretty decent lap in there, so let's just come in. Unfortunately, I didn't realize that or remember that if you don't use the brakes at all during a session on the track, you probably shouldn't make the first time you try to use the brakes when you come into the pits. So that's what I did here. And I'm coming in way too hot, super bumpy, and that's not how you want to enter the pits at IRP. And it was because, unlike the Silver Crown car, the sprint car, and the Champion Midget, the full Midget, we're not using the brakes at all on the Focus Midget. And all those other cars you do, because you have to, because you're going so fast in the straightaway, usually around 140 miles per hour. But these cars are only getting 120, and the fact that you just lift and the engine slows down, that's enough to slow the car down, and you're pretty much good to go. Like, you're cornering at like almost 100 miles per hour. But yeah, if I'm not using the brake, that means the brakes are cold and they're not going to react when I want them to react. So that was a little bit of a problem. Luckily, I just pumped the brakes and I was able to avoid potential near disaster. I don't know how close I was, but yeah, definitely barely managed to slow the car down to make it in and not just run over a bunch of people. So that was fun. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this little breakdown. And yeah, I was very happy with this performance. The team was happy that I was able to get up to speed, and we were able to work well together throughout the course of the week and the weekend, and try to make the car faster. And I think we did do that. So hopefully I'll probably have a couple more videos of these coming out regarding this weekend, the races in particular for the Focus Midget, and potentially Silver Crown Sprint Car too. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video and you feel like you learned something, it was interesting, something I said sparked your insight, or like made you realize, oh, that's how the driver is thinking. I would appreciate a like, a subscribe, and if you want to leave a comment and let me know what you thought of it, then great. I appreciate you guys, and once again, it's been your boy Birdman. I'll talk to you guys later.